Good afternoon. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good day, and welcome to today's program, co-hosted by the American Jewish Committee, the Jewish Federations of North America, Hillel International, and the Anti-Defamation League. We're all delighted to be joined by two exceptional leaders at the U.S. Department of Education, Assistant Secretary Catherine Lhamon in the Office for Civil Rights, and Katy Joseph, Acting Director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. After our conversation, we'll be joined by ADL's Interim Vice President for Civil Rights, Amy Feeman, and JFNA's Associate Vice President of Public Affairs, Karen Bayral, for concluding remarks. However, first, we're delighted to be joined by Hillel International CEO, Adam Lhamon. Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Claire. We're delighted to be a part of this program and so appreciative of AJC for its partnership and all of its work. I apologize out of the gates here for my raspy voice. We're wrapping up our Hillel International Global Assembly, where we hosted more than 1,000 Hillel professionals from around the world. And those Hillel professionals are day in and day out caring for, supporting, inspiring, and advocating for Jewish students on campus at what we all know has been a very, very difficult time. We have recorded at this point 650 incidences of anti-Semitism that represent harassment, threats, marginalization, isolation of Jewish students. And we are doing everything we can to address those issues. But we cannot do this alone, and Jewish students deserve the full protection that they are afforded under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And for that reason, we are so grateful for the work of the Department of Education and specifically the partnership of Assistant Secretary Lhamon, who you'll hear from shortly. She and the Office of Civil Rights, as well as the full department, and you'll hear from Director Joseph as well, they are not new to these issues or concerns. We hosted Assistant Secretary Lhamon at our Campus Climate Summit in North Carolina a year ago with hundreds of administrators from universities. She also joined us a month ago in Los Angeles for a similar summit. Their work is particularly important because having accountability for our universities so that they do not allow, foster, enable pervasively hostile and discriminatory environments for Jewish students is essential to addressing what is a broken campus climate for Jewish students today. So my final point is for all of you who have the ability to advocate, please join us, our partners at AJC, at JFNA, and at the ADL in encouraging the government to provide the resources to the Office of Civil Rights so they can investigate and pursue every claim that needs to be addressed in this context. As we enter the Hanukkah holiday, wishing you all a Chag Sameach. I know working together, we will bring light, joy, and resilience to Jewish students everywhere. Thank you, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and friend, Julie Raymond. Julie, please.
Adam, thank you so much for that really important framing. The hate and the responses to hate that we've seen in schools and on campus have seized our collective consciousness, and not just of the Jewish community, but really of people around the world. And I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time a congressional hearing got the massive global attention that Tuesday's hearing with the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn did. I'm really pleased to be here with Assistant Secretary Catherine Lhamon and Acting Director Katy Joseph. Assistant Secretary Catherine Lhamon from the Office for Civil Rights at Department of Education brings a wealth of experience from the Domestic Policy Council, from chairing the Commission on Civil Rights, serving as Legal Affairs Secretary for California Governor Gavin Newsom. And if that weren't enough, this is actually her second turn as Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the Department of Education, previously for President Obama. Katy Joseph, the Acting Director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, came to the U.S. Department of Education from the Interfaith Alliance, where she served as Director of Policy and Advocacy and worked on legislative, regulatory, and legal initiatives to advance an inclusive vision of religious freedom. All very relevant work in preparation for the conversation we're having today and the work that you're doing every day. I'm going to ask both of them a few questions, and then we'll have some time for questions from the audience. Please put questions that you have in the Q&A feature or email them to questions, that's questions plural, at ajc.org. Assistant Secretary Lhamon and Katy, first I want to thank you for your time. I know that pre-October 7th that you were already working around the clock, and I can't even imagine what your schedules look like now. I want to start by laying a little bit of groundwork. On October 30th, I was honored to be in a room with both of you, with the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, the second gentleman, and a number of other community stakeholders and officials. After hearing a lot of concerns about anti-Semitism in K through 12 and on campus, I remember the secretary saying, and I'm paraphrasing, if the situation that we're seeing now is like nothing we've ever seen before, then our actions have to be like nothing we've ever done before. Has that commitment borne fruit? And what changes have you seen? What changes do you still expect? Assistant Secretary, I'll start with you.
Great. Julie, thank you so much. And also, Adam, thank you for the lovely introduction. And thanks to all for joining us. This is such a crucial time. And these topics are so important to my heart, so important to all of the staff in the Office for Civil Rights, and obviously so important to the president and across government too. I do believe that we are responding in a way that we never have before. I will speak specifically to the Office for Civil Rights and what we're doing, and I know Katy is leading across the department our interagency work and also our work that is department specific in a way that is amazing and beautiful. And just she won't say it herself, so I will just say before she does even that she had been working, doing incredible work since the April launch of the national strategy, and the work had been intense and important before then, and it has taken on obviously its own new importance since then, and it's amazing to me to watch what she leads. So she will describe what she's done, and just to turn to the Office for Civil Rights, we have been enforcing the laws that we enforce right along for Jewish students now for some decades, and that fact is not new. I think it has been insufficiently known, and I am quite worried about the quantum of anti-Semitism that we saw in school communities before October 7th, and then the proliferation that we've seen since then is frankly astonishing. And I say that as someone who's a lifelong civil rights lawyer. Our office knows hate. We abhor hate. We are familiar with the kinds of things that we might see, and the facts as we see them now are not facts I could possibly have imagined, and in the quantity and in the variety that we're now seeing. So I find that astonishing, and we are across OCR totally committed to fulfilling the congressional promise that no person will experience discrimination based on race and national origin in school. And that obviously includes Jewish persons as well. To say how are we responding in new ways, in addition to using the law that we have been using right along, we have updated our complaint form so that it says on the form itself that the Title VI protection that we have applies to Jewish students, and to make that clear that people can come to us. And I say that, that is new and different for us because we don't have jurisdiction formally over religious discrimination. We have jurisdiction over national origin discrimination, and we have long interpreted that to mean that it covers discrimination based on shared ancestry, and so it covers Jewish students. But you kind of have to be a lawyer to know that, and when you file a complaint, you shouldn't have to have a lawyer. So we wanted to make that really clear so that people can know how to use us and come to us. We've also launched technical assistance programs that are specific to the shared ancestry jurisdiction that we have, to be able to explain what the law is, how it applies, and how to come to us if people want to. So we're trying to do information sharing about that also. We just a few weeks ago now created a new website that identifies every case that is within shared ancestry that we are investigating and when we opened it. And that is the second time in the history of OCR that we've ever created a public list of a specific category of cases. We did that because of the quantum of concern in the country about these issues and the need for transparency about what our work is and that we are investigating on this issue, so people can know that they can come to us and that we will open their cases for investigation. So, that's a huge change for us. We also have a webpage that is specific to our shared ancestry information and includes resources that we have generated, including a new Dear Colleague letter. It's our third this calendar year, this specific to this issue, to remind school communities of their obligations and to remind them about how vigorously we enforce, so that they will, we hope, also come into compliance. Just the last thing I will say, because I feel like I'm taking up too much oxygen on this, but the last thing on this is the opening of the complaints. We opened some of the complaints within a day of filing them, and more of them within a week, within a few weeks of their filing. That is lightning fast for us. We saw in the last fiscal year in excess of 19,000 complaints come in to our office. And at that volume, we have about 400 people who are investigative staff. At that volume, it's very hard for us to process all of the complaints and to move them forward. We want to make sure that every school community knows we're open for business on this topic. We are here for every student who needs us, and we are vigorous about our civil rights enforcement in this area. So we're really trying to make sure that that is very clear. I'll stop and turn to Katy.
That was so helpful, and I'm going to come back to you on a lot of those technicalities. Katy, as you answer the question about sort of what has changed since October 7th, because Assistant Secretary Lhamon mentioned the national strategy, can you also sort of talk about the pre-existing tools like the national strategy that the Department of Education was working with, and how those tools have helped guide actions in this moment? How have they adapted and changed to meet the moment that we're in?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Julie. And thank you, Catherine, for those extremely kind words. I want folks to know that at the department, the work that we're doing in this moment is truly collaborative. So the work that's happening in the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, we're situated here within the Office of the Secretary. That gives you a sense of just how seriously the department is taking this work. But we're working very closely with the Office for Civil Rights, the Office of Post-Secondary Education, the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and beyond, to ensure that students at every grade level are in inclusive, supportive learning environments, and that anti-Semitism, as well as other related forms of discrimination and bias, are taken seriously, and that they're able to learn to their full potential. So this time of year, before we get into the anti-Semitism awareness campaign that the department was leading under the national strategy, this time of year, we're thinking a lot about light as a Jewish community. Tonight will be the first night of Hanukkah. I know my family is preparing. I've been getting questions about when are we going to get latkes for a few weeks now. But I really want to voice my deep appreciation for the teachers, for the university staff, the Hillel directors, the rabbis, the cantors, the community leaders who are that light for so many students right now. After October 7th, we spoke to many university leaders, including Hillel directors, who were grieving, who were struggling themselves, who were showing up every day for their students and for their communities with little time to process for themselves. That is a tremendous gift that you are giving to your community, both on your campuses and your schools, and to the Jewish community across the board. So thank you truly for the role that you're playing for students right now. For our team, we've been engaged in work around anti-Semitism awareness going back a number of months under the National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism that was released by the White House in May of this year. It included over 100 commitments across the federal government to address and root out anti-Semitism and the ways that is impacting both Jewish Americans and others who are impacted by discrimination and these interlocking forms of bias. For us, that took the form of an anti-Semitism awareness campaign, as I said, that included the development of new resources, site visits to initiatives across the country that are equipping students as well as educators to recognize and to counter proactively anti-Semitism, to build their knowledge, not just about the very real, very scary stuff that's coming with the rise in anti-Semitism, but also the amazing, wonderful things about being part of the Jewish community. So those site visits, those new resources are housed on our website. And in the past couple months since October 7th, these are relationships that we have leaned into in such a moment of acute pain and concern to understand and ensure that the department's actions are driven by the needs of the community and what students are experiencing day to day.
Katy, I want to follow up with you sort of in that vein. because you talked about the very real and very scary things that are happening, especially staying with the K through 12 arena. We're seeing teachers acting inappropriately and bullying and walkouts and all sorts of sort of never before seen incidents at the K through 12 level. And I think I can speak for AJC, ADL, Hillel, and JFNA in saying that we get a lot of questions from parents about what they should be doing in that situation. What is the guidance that we should be giving them? And what's your recommendation?
I appreciate that question because it's a real source of concern, I think, for many parents and families about what their children are experiencing on a day-to-day basis in schools. I would encourage everyone who's listening, when you have a moment, to go to ed.gov. You will see a button to identify the various actions that the department has taken since October 7th to identify best practices and recommendations for school communities that are struggling with how to respond. You will find links to the resources that Assistant Secretary Lhamon identified that you can certainly always bring to the attention of school leaders if there are cause for concern, as well as thinking through what are some of these proactive steps that can be taken to ensure that teachers and staff are appropriately equipped to identify and understand how to intervene when incidents of anti-Semitism do arise.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Assistant Secretary Lhamon, you're sort of the enforcer at Department of Education. Can you give us an overview of sort of what that looks like in the context of anti-Semitism, maybe explaining sort of what is Title VI? You talked about national origin. How do you sort of determine the complaints that are received, that are opened, and what sort of complaints hold water and which don't?
Sure. So, Julie, I hope you'll tell me if I become too lawyerly or too in the weeds on what we're doing. But let me describe what we do.
I'll send you a signal.
Exactly. If I don't answer the mail, please do kick me. The Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act is the first federal civil rights law that we were created to enforce, and it has promised since 1964 forward that no person shall experience discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin in any program that receives federal funds. So that includes schools. The lens through which we're able to address anti-Semitism when it occurs in schools is that Title VI lens and the coverage of national origin discrimination. Whereas I don't have jurisdiction over religion, I do have jurisdiction over national origin, and the case law is such that it's long been understood in the courts that characteristics that are understood to be from a shared ancestry, so a country that speaks the same language, a country of origin that has shared characteristics associated with it, is protected under Title VI. And we have, from the second Bush administration, through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, and now the Biden administration, enforced Title VI to protect Jewish students in that lens. Our statutory charge, on a regulatory charge, is to investigate whenever we have information that the law may have been violated. So that means we don't pick and choose our cases. We don't say, well, we like these ones better, or this is a priority for us. We address any case over which we have jurisdiction that comes into us. So if an issue arises at a school, the last incidents of harassment or discrimination occurred within the last 6 months, and it falls within our Title VI jurisdiction, we will open it. Period. That is and has been our rule. So when we get a complaint, and most of the investigations that we open come in through complaints because we do have this very high complaint volume. When we get a complaint, our staff evaluate it. Sometimes we need permission, consent from the complainant to be able to investigate. So if we have to tell the school a specific person, specific facts about a person, we may need that consent. And so we'll ask for that, and assuming we get consent, then we can open it. We sometimes want to get a little more information than we saw that came in the complaint form, or we want to know a little bit more to figure out the scope of what we should be investigating. So that's our evaluation stage. When we open, we notify the school, so school district or college or university in this case, that we've opened and what the subject of the investigation is. And we ask for documents, we ask to interview people at the school. We certainly speak to the person who came to us as a complainant. That person might also know other witnesses or other people who were affected. We will want to speak to them also to be able to assess the facts. The Title VI obligation for us is to identify whether a school has violated the law and then tell the school and give them a chance to voluntarily comply with the law. And if not, then we have the tool, it's a very big tool that we have, which is to withhold federal funds. But we are required in statute to inform the school that the law has been violated and to give them a chance to come into compliance before we can initiate fund termination proceedings. So that means these are pretty fact-specific kinds of investigations. And also the case law under Title VI, as it has developed, has said that the hostile environment test, which is what we're looking at here, is that we'd have to know that a particular set of actions or statements in the totality of the circumstances, so take it together and viewed from an objective and subjective perspective. And so that just means we look at it from the perspective of a reasonable person who is in the same shoes as the complainant. So another 19-year-old college student, for example, if that's what we're looking at, and would that person have experienced that harm? And does the harm rise to the level that it is so severe or pervasive that it limits or denies access to education? If so, then the Title VI question is, did the school respond promptly enough and effectively enough to address the harm? So I say that to say, it may be that something that is truly egregious happens at a school, and it may be in the end that there's not a Title VI violation because the school responds promptly and effectively and fulfills its Title VI obligation, which is welcome, except that I just will say at the outset that we know people don't get their life back before they were discriminated against. You don't get the time before you experience that harm in the first instance. And so, there is a quantum of harm that sometimes goes unredressed, and that is painful to also realize. The investigations often involve our talking to students, talking to faculty, talking to other people about their experience, weighing. Sometimes there's varying versions of events. So trying to get to the truth of the matter, what actually happened and how serious was it? And then working on what response did the school have? And sometimes the response is very good, which is, we love seeing that, that's great. And more commonly, the response is less good. And so we need to be working with school communities on how to redress. But that's the path, and we do that for every case. And what we hold is that these are the deepest hurts in people's lives that they're bringing to us, and they deserve an answer as quickly as they can get it, and they deserve for that answer to be correct when it comes from the government. So we are working every day aware that the students who are trying to learn in school are somebody's baby, and that baby deserves support and love and a school community that is ready for them. And our Congress has long promised, now for close to 6 decades, that all of us have a right to experience education with that promise. And it is our goal at the Office for Civil Rights to make sure that that is a lived experience at every desktop for every student.
Thank you so much. If I'm that 19-year-old on campus and I've experienced some painful interaction and I take that step to file a report, A, should I take that step to file a report?
Yes.
B, then how long do these processes take? How long does the school have to sort of rectify this incident or address the pain caused? And also, what's the level of publicity now, knowing A, that you're making open investigations public, which I think is not common. You'll correct me if,
yes.
And that there's just tremendous media attention on these issues right now.
So I'll say several things in there. In the first, should you make a complaint? Typically, the first complaint would be to the school to say, this happened, and I'm asking you to correct it. And how quickly should the school respond? Well, their Title VI obligation is to ensure that no person experiences discrimination. That means every day at the school. So, the goal is to prevent it in the first instance, and when prevention doesn't work, to get in there immediately, to take steps so that students are not losing a minute of learning time, that they're able to respond right away. That is our expectation. When a school hasn't responded to a student's satisfaction and the student thinks that discrimination is still occurring, the student can come to us and file a complaint. We try to get there as fast as we can. The reality is that sometimes it can take a very long time because of the volume of complaints that I mentioned. And just to say, and I say this as a fact, not as an excuse, but my staff are carrying now on average 42 cases per person, some of them well in excess of 42 cases. And that's not a tenable caseload. It means that we don't get to every case as quickly as we want to. And we always operate aware that students who need us, and they need us now. So we are moving as fast as we can, and we do need more resources to be able to meet the volume of need that we see now. But back to the student and the 19-year-old's experience, and what does that 19-year-old have a basis to expect? My hope is that our school communities know their Title VI legal obligations, that they know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, and that they are responding immediately, and that they are ensuring that school communities are safe. Sometimes I see that, and it's amazing. I love to see when schools actually do the right thing, and they do it now. So, that can be very heartwarming, and it's sometimes as simple as hearing from a university president, hearing from a school principal, hearing from a leader at a school that what happened was wrong, that what happened was not the expectation for the school community, and that the school is taking concrete and specific steps to address it and to make sure that the student is okay. That is often enough, right? And it's too often not what we see. So we want more schools to be doing more of that. So we are trying to share information about what works and what we expect, and we lift up, we issue press releases when we resolve cases so people can know how we apply the law to particular facts, what our expectations are, kinds of things that schools need to do when they need to take corrective action. So we are trying to share that information also. We're offering webinars like this one, we're offering our trainings, we're really trying to get our message out to share how important this is. And I'm very gratified to see places that are responding. And I love nothing more than enforcing civil rights in schools, and I am very, very pleased to help any school come into compliance when necessary.
That's great. I'm mindful that there's this tension between the ability of the Department of Education to be proactive,
Right.
and also the requirement to also be reactive. And Katy, I want to ask you, you talked a lot about the guidance that you're giving, the guidance that exists. Are you seeing since October 7th an increase in educational institutions reaching out to say, we don't necessarily know what to do in this situation, we're experiencing things that we haven't before, can you help?
Yes. And it shouldn't have gotten to this point, because we know that anti-Semitism has been impacting students long before this moment. And I think that this is a time when it has become acutely clear to many school leaders, both at the K-12 level and also in higher ed, that they don't know how to approach this moment. At a roundtable that Deputy Secretary Martin held with superintendents before October 7th to talk about the rise in anti-Semitism, one of those superintendents mentioned that we hear again and again from our teachers and from principals that when they see anti-Semitism, when students and families come to them, they don't know what to do and they freeze. And we need help. No student, no parent, no family member wants that reaction from a school. So if this is the time that it takes for them to realize, hey, we really need to get up to speed, then the department is here and ready to ensure that they are ready to step up. And when they don't, they get to visit our friends in the Office for Civil Rights. And that's when some of the enforcement work happens. But in terms of the best practices that we're amplifying for schools, it's notable, and it shouldn't be, but it's notable that we're hearing from the schools that seem to be doing the relative best right now. They are the ones who are not in the news. They are the ones who are not getting called up to Capitol Hill to testify. These are schools that have invested heavily in religious inclusion, in identifying pluralism as a key value, and really putting the resources and the time behind that. For those who have not been able to do that, but are realizing that they are at a moment where they can step up, there is the immediate term response. How are they doing communications? who are they talking to? How are they talking to those constituencies? You know, for instance, often school leaders are used to, in a college setting, sending out messages to students, faculty, and staff, but it's parents who are calling and are concerned. So is that part of the communications plan? Are there mechanisms in place on a day-to-day basis if there is a security threat to ensure that students are safe and they know what to do in an emergency situation? And what kinds of alternative resources are they providing for those students, say, who did submit a complaint, but are now sitting with that hurt and that pain from what they've experienced? Are schools putting the resources behind mental health supports, academic supports that are culturally sensitive, that understand that an experience of anti-Semitism can have a real impact on a student's sense of belonging and their ability to learn in school? So that's the immediate term. There's a lot of long-term work that can and should go into ensuring that schools are inclusive of all students, including students. But in this moment of urgency, those are some key steps that many schools are taking and still need to be taking to make sure that their students are supported.
Thank you so much. Assistant Secretary Lhamon, you threw out before this astronomical figure of 19,000 investigations or complaints from last year. How does that compare to today? Are you seeing rising numbers of complaints? And specifically as it relates to complaints of anti-Semitism?
Yep.
I think we've talked before about how the Jewish community is not great at reporting. Are we doing better?
Yes, you're doing so much better at reporting, which is not good news, really, because it means that there's this quantum of harm that's astonishing.
Yeah.
So all of last year, among the just over 19,000 complaints that we received, 5 were related to anti-Semitism. So, almost nothing coming into us last year, which I do not think tracks the actual experience of students in schools. And just to put that in context, there are 18,000 school districts in the country and more than 6,000 colleges and universities. So, there was more harm that wasn't coming to us in the last year. This year, the fiscal year started October 1st, so it's tracks a week before the Hamas attack on Israel. This year we've seen I think 76 complaints come in so far about shared ancestry, and more than 50 of them were about anti-Semitism. So that we're tracking through those as fast as we can to move them, but people know about us, they're coming to us, and they're raising a pretty wide variety of kinds of harms that they're identifying at schools. And I will say, if you've read about it in the news, we probably have a complaint about it already, and also quite a few places where we haven't read about it in the news. And just to concretize that too, as I talked about the 19-year-old college student, this is also happening in P12 campuses as well. This is happening with little kids, and in fact patterns that are quite scary for little kids in school too. And we have to be concerned about every student everywhere all the time. But yes, we are seeing a higher volume of complaints on the topic come in. I think that is responsive to the kinds of concerns that we're hearing about, and I still think it's fewer than the actual experience of students in schools too.
Thank you very much. Claire, do we have questions that have come in from the audience yet?
Yes. So our first question is for both of you. We are getting many questions on this, but it's from Hannah Jonas, who's a freshman in college, and is asking, I watched the hearing on Tuesday with 3 university presidents and was really disturbed that calling for genocide of Jews requires context. How can both of your teams work to make me feel safer on campus when our leadership makes these kind of statements? Will the department do anything as a result of this hearing? And Assistant Secretary Rayman, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Let me say, there's no context required. Calling for genocide is categorically unacceptable and scary, and it deserves an immediate and effective response. Full stop. We have investigations open for 2 of those universities now that preceded the hearing, but we have investigations open for 2 of them, and I expect in the not distant future to have the 3rd in investigation. So one thing we can do is that we can apply the Title VI standard to experience for students in schools. And I should be clear, in this context and in every other, if something causes a student to have access to education limited or denied, and the school doesn't respond effectively, that is a Title VI violation, and that's not limited to things that occur on the school campus. So I hear the concern, and I can't imagine having anything but concern about that. And my core message to you as a college student and to everybody who is on this webinar is that we should feel confident as a national community rejecting genocide, period. And we should feel confident as a national community that students in school deserve to know that their school leaders and their national community stands with them in their ability to learn safely at school, period.
Katy, before you jump in, I want to ask a question that I think we didn't discuss before, but is relevant probably for all of our listeners. Assistant Secretary Lhamon, who can file a complaint?
Anyone. Thank you for saying that. Anyone. Often there's a standing requirement in court, which means that the person has to be directly affected, him or herself. We don't have that requirement. Somebody who is concerned that there may be discrimination that takes place in a school can come to our office, ask us to investigate it. Just tell us enough to know what school, where, why you are concerned, and if it could fall within the jurisdiction that we have, we will open for investigation.
Thank you. Sorry, Katy.
I echo Assistant Secretary Lhamon, and Hannah, thank you for your question. There is no room for hate on any campus or in any school. And the White House spoke extremely strongly in response to that equivocation that we heard from school leaders, and condemned any sort of statements to this effect. This is not a matter of free speech for the Department of Education. We are focused on Title VI. So what is constituting a hostile learning environment? There is a gap, I think, in education around both what it means to be Jewish, what is kind of the experience of the Jewish community in the United States now. We hear this both from students who find themselves as the only Jewish student in their high school class, or who are now moving through their campuses and are hearing things that are deeply disturbing to them that others might be saying to them, oh, that's not what that means. There is something, I think, intergenerational about what is being brought to the fore for many members of the Jewish community right now, and we can't overlook that, but that may not be apparent to those who don't have the deep knowledge and education around what it's like to be Jewish in America right now. So there are enforcement questions here. There's norming questions. What is acceptable and how we engage with each other in a campus community. And there are also basic kind of curiosity and education questions. I'm always mindful that the Jewish community is small relative to the larger American population, and it shouldn't be on that one Jewish student in their high school class to be educating others about why that is so deeply disturbing.
Thank you. Our next question is also for you, Katy. Jimmy Brady in Boston is asking, can you share a little bit more about the proactive side of the work the center is doing? I'm sure that it all feels responsive after October 7th, or maybe not. And of course, we can't predict the future, but what can be done before this kind of surge to help mitigate, including actions taken by our viewers to partner with you?
I'm excited to partner with viewers who are on this call, the organizations that are hosting our longtime partners of ours in this essential work in communities. And we do our best to amplify what is making a real difference in school communities on a day-to-day basis, but putting that into practice is another step further. So I'm always ready to make our team available to support you in ensuring that you and the students that you are serving, whether they are the folks who are viewing now, I know we have some students who are watching, or family and community members who are concerned about the schools that young people are attending in their area. As we think ahead in terms of putting forward kind of next steps, I want to invite everyone to join the Department of Education next week for 2 national webinars. You will hear yet again from Assistant Secretary Lhamon, as well as a bit more from me, but in a conversation led by Secretary Cardona, given the seriousness of the situation that we're seeing right now, what our commitments are as a department, what we are doing, as well as hearing directly from practitioners who are putting these best practices into effect in their school communities, who can speak to what's possible. So I will share the RSVP information with our hosts in the chat, and hopefully they'll be able to amplify that. But I hope to see everyone next week for that conversation as well.
Our next question is for you, Assistant Secretary Lhamon. How does the Department of Education partner with other branches of government to help protect students? And who are your main partners in this work?
It's relatively common for us to investigate jointly with the Department of Justice, in particular in circumstances in which they would have jurisdiction over something that we don't. So, they also have law enforcement jurisdiction, criminal law enforcement jurisdiction, and they also have jurisdiction specifically over religion. So sometimes there are reasons to conduct an investigation jointly. I'm in very routine conversation with my counterpart at the Department of Homeland Security about school safety issues and the civil rights and civil liberties lens for the Department of Homeland Security. It is conceivable to be investigating with another federal partner as well. In addition to our investigative function, the national strategy to combat anti-Semitism is a whole of government approach, and that it does involve conversations certainly with the White House. It's a White House-led strategy, and with our sister agencies across government. There are, I think, 13 federal agencies that have Title VI external enforcement authority. So work with the other agencies also, and that that ranges from Department of Treasury, Department of Commerce, Environmental Protection Agency, across government also. And so we are in very active conversation with each other. They're the part of the White House-led national strategy involves an interagency policy committee where we're working together, sharing best practices, talking about what one agency is doing, so that another agency might have ideas as well. And that is a weekly occurrence for us, and has been for months. So it's a productive and of long-standing active conversation for us.
And staying with you, Assistant Secretary, many are asking about schools losing funding. How often is funding revoked?
It's incredibly infrequent because the statutory requirement is that we have to invite a school to volunteer into compliance. And so it's been now some decades since the department has actually withheld federal funds from a school. But to say, I think that's good news. And it also is a reflection of how powerful the enforcement mechanism that Congress has given to us is. There is no school that wants to be in a position that it has been determined to have violated the law, and it has refused to fulfill what President Kennedy described as the simple justice that no federal funds should be used for discrimination. So that, just to say it again, to break that down, the statutory requirement is that we cannot withhold federal funds unless we have told the school what it did wrong, given the school a chance to come into compliance, and it has declined. And then we can initiate fund termination proceedings. I have gotten right to the edge of that circumstance with schools multiple times. I just say I came to OCR for the first time 10 years ago, and I have had to say to a school, we are now prepared to initiate fund termination proceedings. At that point, schools tend to back down and to tell us that they're ready to come into compliance. I love it when we don't have to get all the way to that phase, when schools leadership recognize in the course of investigation, there's something here that wasn't right. We share our concerns, and they say, we're ready to be arm in arm with the federal government to move forward and do the right thing. I love that when we get there. And I am absolutely prepared to withhold federal funds from a school that hurts a child, period.
Can I follow up really quickly with an additional question related to that? What's the timeline for a school to make that redress?
To make the commitment to us, or to have satisfied it, because those are different things. So
you tell me.
Okay, so let me break it down some more. When we communicate to a school, we have concerns. We think that Title VI is likely violated. Here's the things that we're worried about. If a school says, "Great, thank you for letting us know, and we're ready to identify what we should do," we negotiate with them to come up with what we make a set of recommendations. We think you should do these things. The school might tell us we can't do these, but we could do these others, and we come into agreement about what the right steps are. Typically, that involves a set of commitments that might be new policy, training for school leadership, support services, counseling for affected students, maybe a climate survey to assess whether there's more that needs to be done, and then there would be federal monitoring of the compliance over time. And we love it when the monitoring can end quickly, because everything looks like it's great and we're delighted. And if it takes more time, we will stay. We don't leave kids behind. So if we've made the agreement that the school community needs change, we stay to see if that change is sufficient and fulfills legal obligations. Sometimes when a school has made a set of commitments, further incidents come up and the school's response was not effective under Title VI, and we would address that in the monitoring as well as something that still needs to get corrected. So sometimes, that's our path. There's another path where we communicate to a school, we think that the law has been violated. The school says, we disagree. We think that what we did was fine. We say, okay, these are the things you need to do to come into compliance. And the school says, no. The path that is written in law for what we would do then is either refer to the Department of Justice to litigate, or have an administrative hearing. It's like a little mini trial at the Department of Education. And we would go in front of a third party adjudicator to determine whether we are right or the school is right about whether the law has been violated. If at that point the adjudicator agrees with me, which is what I think is the right answer, but if at that point the school agrees with the department, then the school could still go to court to sue and say it disagreed with the administrative judge's decision and it wants a court to review. And if at that point the court agreed with the department, the school would still then have an opportunity to come into compliance. So when I say that I really have my hands tied behind my back before I could actually withhold federal funds, I really do. These are the steps that are written in law for what we must do before we could actually take federal funds away. And I do think it's very important for school communities to know that we are serious and that we will walk down that path if we need to. And we have communicated that, and we are prepared to continue to communicate that as needed. Although I will say I welcome when we don't need it, because it's great when we can see compliance that is voluntary sooner.
And our last question, Julie, before I turn it back to you, is from Jean Germanovich and many others. We're all in agreement that this is a really difficult time, but can we find an element of opportunity here? Is there an element of hope that universities will now be more aware and thus be more careful and proactive in the future? And more broadly, is there anything giving you hope at this point in your work? And Katy, we'll start with you.
Oh, I'm taking a deep breath because I think finding those moments of hope are so important. I think that it is very easy to feel overwhelmed in thinking about this work and thinking about what it might feel like to be a student who is facing this dynamic on your campus right now. Secretary Cardona recently held a listening session at a university in Baltimore with about 24 Jewish undergrad and graduate students to talk about what they're feeling right now. And it was very intense, understandably. I think it resonated with him very deeply, both as an educator and as a parent. And afterward, as folks were kind of saying their goodbyes and their thank yous, one of the support staff came up to him with tears in their eyes and said, "I didn't know how much we needed this." Giving voice to that pain and being heard and seeing action come from those moments gives me hope. I hope that everyone who has listened here today and has come to understand a little bit more about how the department, and particularly OCR, is approaching these issues and taking these complaints seriously with the gravity that they deserve, feels that they have been heard and recognizes the commitment to action that we are making to you today.
And I'll build that too, to say, I am a lifelong civil rights lawyer. You don't do this work if you can't hold on to hope. So I do think that there is a moment for hope, even amidst what a scary time this is and the proliferation of hate that we are witnessing and living. And just to say, at the very baseline, all of you who have come together today are a community who support each other. You are a community who believe that we deserve our highest national aspirations, that we will not experience discrimination in school. So we are a community together who are committed to making sure that kids can be safe in school and that we can live the non-discrimination promises of our country. So I take hope from this. I take hope from the coming together. In addition, I've been talking to university leaders. I've been talking to K-12 leaders. I've been watching the kinds of changes that they're volunteering into since October 7th. And I see more information in schools about the non-discrimination requirements, about how they are recommitting to them, how they will comply, what they will do. I'm seeing best practices shared across communities about what more can be done. I so regret that the loss of life, that the war that began on October 7th is a genesis for that, because none of us deserved to have our loved ones, our a country we hold dear, a set of aspirations and values that we hold dear, a faith that we hold dear and core to us, challenged in that way, and the loss of life that we've seen in that way to be the genesis for that change. And if we didn't see that kind of change responsive to it, that would be all the more cataclysmic. So I am grateful for what is rising out of ashes. I am grateful for the many people who are willing to come with us to promise and commit their compliance and to support each other. And I think it was courageous and brave for people to come together today. And so I take hope from watching that. And I tell you also, in addition to that hope, I'm not operating on the basis of hope. I also will take federal funds away from somebody who will not ensure those non-discrimination promises. I am very serious about the enforcement responsibility that I have the honor to take in this role, and we plan to use it.
I can't thank you both enough for this conversation that was both deeply reassuring and tactically tremendously edifying. And beyond that, really for all your work day in and day out, you talked about commitment to prevention and action, and please know that we see that commitment, not just today, but really every day, and know that you are holding the Jewish students and all students in your work and doing everything in your power to keep them safe during times of challenge and times of peace. And we are extremely, extremely grateful.
Thank you for bringing us all together today too.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Now I have the honor to turn to Amy Feeman from the Anti-Defamation League, who's gonna give us a few remarks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Lhamon and Katy, for your leadership, your commitment to enforcing Title VI, and to working with campuses all across the country to counter anti-Semitic harassment and discrimination. Thank you also so much to our partners at AJC, Hillel, JFNA, for your continued partnership in this work. I too am going to get to hope in a moment, but I'll start by saying that we truly do have our work cut out for us. In the first month following October 7th, ADL documented a 316% increase in anti-Semitic incidents across the US, with 124 incidents of harassment, vandalism, and assault taking place on campuses alone, well above the 12 incidents that we had tracked last year during a similar time period. In addition, since the beginning of this school year, 73% of Jewish college students surveyed by ADL and Hillel reported experiencing or witnessing some form of anti-Semitism on their campus. And since October 7th, the percentage of Jewish students who say they feel comfortable with others on campus knowing that they are Jewish dropped by nearly a half. So these statistics are indeed hard to swallow, but I hope that this audience will remember that ADL, AJC, Hillel, JFNA, and so many other organizations are here to help. And I want to share just a few resources available to audience members here today, including ways in which we can support you in bringing information to the attention of the Department of Education. So first, in partnership with Hillel International, the Brandeis Center, the law firm Gibson Dunn, and others, ADL has launched a campus anti-Semitism legal line, or a call hotline, for students, parents, and faculty who are interested in understanding their legal rights and legal remedies, and or who are seeking assistance in filing Title VI complaints with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. So I hope you will see our call line as a resource. ADL and our partners are continuing to provide non-legal guidance and resource to constituents in the wake of anti-Semitism on campus, whether it's rhetoric and during rallies or anti-Semitic content in the classroom. Please know that we have folks on the ground and work in partnership with AJC, Hillel, Chabad, and others to provide advocacy, guidance, and support. We also have substantive resources that we can offer. Together with our partners, we've developed a list of asks of campus administrators, some of which build off of steps that universities have taken in the wake of resolution agreements with the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. So if you are part of a group of concerned students or parents or alumni and you're looking for more systemic change on your campus, please reach out. We can help. We also have education resources, toolkits for students, allies who are looking for resources to confront anti-Semitism and bias on campus, to be prepared to talk about Judaism, Zionism, and or Israel. So I hope you will take advantage of those as well. I'll echo what was said earlier on this webinar. In order to address anti-Semitism on campus, it truly is going to require a whole of society approach, with everyone on this call, including in particular members of the audience, playing a key role in coming forward to report incidents and take action. So I want to thank you too for your partnership and leadership, and please be in touch.
Thank you, Amy. Please welcome Karen Baral, Vice President of Government Relations at the Jewish Federations of North America.
Hi, everybody. I have 1 minute because I know this call is going to end. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank the Assistant Secretary and Katie. I mean, it's just always so comprehensive listening to you and reassuring. Jewish Federation North America, we're working with everybody, with AJC, with Hillel, with ADL, with all of our partners to really handle this situation in the best way possible, and protect students on campus, and to do whatever we can legally on a federal level, on a state level, to ensure that we change the climate on campuses and we combat anti-Semitism. And we are all there for that, and we have a great grassroots system for that, and we are working very hard in Washington, and also using the IRA definition and encouraging the college campuses to use the IRA definition to help define anti-Semitism, and use it as a tool that will help all of our students and also help the Assistant Secretary in her work. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the U.S. Department of Education and all our co-hosts today. This concludes today's program. Thank you again, and goodbye.